All right, here we're going to be modifying the sine or cosine wave by adding things inside the function and adding things outside the function. As with any family, if you add something inside the function, it's going to affect x in the x direction. Inversely, if you add 7, it's going to push it back 7. If you subtract 3, it's actually going to move it forward 3. Always inverse. K being outside the function is closed, is going to affect the y direction, the y-axis. And that's a direct effect. So plus 3 means up 3, and minus 7 means down 7. That's a little easier to track. Now on the sine wave or cosine wave, what that really is moving up and down is the axis of the wave, or the midline, right? It's not that the crest has moved up or the trough has moved up necessarily, but the middle of the wave has jumped that many units, k units, whatever that might happen to be. Over here we have an example of sine x plus pi inside plus 3 outside. So those are going to be doing two different things. The pi inside is going to be moving it to the left, right? Plus means backwards when you're inside there with the function. So I'm going to leave myself a little footnote there, left pi. And that plus 3 is being outside is direct, it's going to go up 3. So the way I take those into the graph, here I have just the regular sine wave as reference here, topping out at 1, negative 1, starting at the origin in the middle of the wave. And so all that needs to be accounted for. Shifting left, I'm going to go in the negative direction, and I kind of want to leave myself a little scaffolding that I can reference here. Up 3, the midline is 0 for the sine or cosine wave originally, and that midline is what's going to be shifting up to 3. Now from here, I call this kind of my ghost origin, right? My mock origin. The origin is still here. I haven't moved where it was, but this wave is going to be referencing its own shifted origin. So I'm kind of giving myself parameters for that. Now the amplitude has not been changed. There's no A term, so it still has to go 1 above and 1 below my midline here. So I'm giving myself a lot of infrastructure here. I haven't even started drawing the graph yet. So from my new origin, that's going to be kind of where the sine wave starts in the middle. It's got to go up to 1 past the midline, down to negative 1 past the midline, and it's got to do all that in a 2 pi period, because a b term is not present, so that 2 pi is still 2 pi. So negative pi up to positive pi is going to be a 2 pi window in which I have to go from the middle of the wave to the crest, to the trough, and back to the middle of the wave. So that is going to cross again halfway between those two, and my first crest is going to be between those, and my first trough is there, giving myself lots of points of reference, and then that pattern is going to continue on and on and on. So all that's changed, right? It didn't shrink or stretch vertically or horizontally because it just got additives, but it went back and up. But tracking that for a wave can be hard, so I get a lot of little scaffolding to make that happen. Another example for cosine, I have something being added inside the function and something being added outside the function. So if I recognize if it's inside the function, that's going to affect the horizontal change inversely. Minus pi over 2 is actually going to move it right pi over 2. And a minus 2 outside is going to affect the y directly down 2. So I use both of those to kind of generate this pseudo origin, this mock origin that I'm going to base my new cosine wave off of. So moving to the right half of pi can be a little tricky. Just recognize where my pi is. Halfway between that is going to be my new y-axis, right? And down 2, that's talking about the midline of that wave, right? Even though cosine starts at the crest, the middle of the wave is still 0 like sine. So that middle of the wave is what gets shoved down 2. That's going to kind of be my new reference origin. Even though this is still in reality, that's still the origin, right? I haven't moved it, but I'm referencing in that perspective. So other things about this graph I have to recognize, the amplitude was not altered in any way. It's still going 1 above and 1 below its midline, which is now down here. So the highest it can achieve is 1 above, and the lowest it can achieve is 1 below. So I give myself all these parameters to stay within my wave as I start to draw it. Now, the cosine wave does not start in the middle of the wave. It does not start at the origin. So even though this is my new origin, that's not where I start graphing. Similar to cosine, as always, I got to start at its crest. So here's my origin, but but I need to go to its highest amplitude it can achieve over that origin, and that's where I can start graphing my wave. Now I gotta know how long it takes me to repeat this cycle. The B term is 1, so that 2 pi isn't altered in any way, but I did start at pi over 2, so I gotta recognize how long it will take. Where's the benchmark where I'll complete a 2 pi cycle if I started at pi over 2? Well, that's gonna be at 2.5 pi. So if that's 3 pi, 2.5 pi would be between that. That's where I have to get back up to my crest. So I'm gonna leave myself a little, a little breadcrumb there. And between those two is where it's gonna hit its lowest point, right in the middle, symmetrically between those two crests. And then I'm gonna cross my midline halfway between those moments. So I know where I'm curving down and where I'm curving up. And then I can continue that, right? Goes on forever, it's a wave, but that's giving me one little snapshot of how this cosine wave didn't stretch or pull in any direction, but shifted left, shifted right, and down.